probably, well, more times, 30 times probably. And my husband was the principal guest conductor of the Sarajevo Philharmonic. So we would go and he would work with the orchestra for a week, and I would be working with the women leaders for a week. And he went with Mickey for his 25th time to conduct the orchestra. February of last year, it was farewell because he had a brain tumor and was dying. But this is very, very important to me, this book. It took me 13 years to find it. All right, so I'm going to read you something that relates, Abby, and Pamela, to your film, because I saw it on public television the other day. So that's why I chose to read this. It's section 2 called Victims or Agents. And as I said, I'm going to just do some selections from the first vignette, which is what was happening on the ground, and the second, what was happening with the policymakers. 11, inside and outside. Inside, the unspeakable. A woman walked 90 miles across central Bosnia with her 2 small children, going well out of her way to skirt military roadblocks. She arrived exhausted and emaciated at Zenica, the 4th largest city in Bosnia, 48 miles north of Sarajevo. A staff member of Medica Zenica, an aid organization serving hundreds of traumatized women, listened to her story. Before their escape, the fatherless family had spent 3 months at an internment camp in Croat-controlled territory where they hung onto life with little to eat and abysmal sanitary conditions. The mother described her torment as she listened for hours on end to her children crying, locked up in the next room. In that camp, rape and other tortures were part of everyday life. To the medical worker hearing her story, the assignment of collecting statistics on this woman and the thousands of others so abused seemed a mockery of their experience. She'd ask me, what do numbers mean when one woman tells me she has been raped 150 times? And how many women have been killed and aren't here to tell us how many times they were assaulted? Death frequently followed. Too often the accounts could come only from witnesses rather than the victims themselves. While the reports were numbingly abundant, every horror was unique. Each belonged to only one person. Sitting close to this woman, my arm around her, I'm talking about now as I would meet with the women themselves, I often felt more in touch with the world than I did in my diplomatic world. In the quiet, we exchanged a few words, perhaps pictures of our children. As we talked about her experience, and then about the life-threatening illness of my daughter, I was grateful for the humanizing moments she afforded me, away from the pomp and posturing of my role. Embracing her, I embraced myself, the evil we were forced to face, and the strength we mustered in spite of it. Some women were emotionally distant, as if a thick scab had formed over their raw emotions. But to cover wounds is not to heal them. Perhaps time would be the ultimate cure. As each day passed, they would be able to integrate their experience into a stronger sense of self. The world would offer them acknowledgement and understanding, which they would transform into some sort of psychological reparation. Or would time simply allow the world to once again forget? 12. Outside, the politics of rape. Medica Zenica, empathizing with the survivors, complained bitterly that the International Red Cross and the Office of the UN High Commissioner for Refugees, UNHCR, knew about the massive numbers of rapes but failed to sound the alarm. The small NGO accused the Red Cross and UN of knowing about the camps as early as the summer of 1993. The truth was actually worse. In 1992, on 6 August and 10 and 11 November, the American TV news show Nightline carried stories on death camps, calling them Bosnia's hidden horrors. Nightline's 14 January 1993 show was titled Rape as a Weapon of War. Indeed, the lack of official response was morally criminal, but the, quote, international community, unquote, was too amorphous to accuse of the crime, and there was no framework for reckoning and no one to press charges. Dismayed by the silence of the policymakers, women in other countries began to speak on behalf of Bosnians, creating a growing sense of international solidarity. The rapes became a theme of the UN's 4th World Conference on Women, held in Beijing in early 1995. Still, many policymakers in America as well as Europe continued to ignore the evidence that officials on the ground reported to me. And then I go into what the evidence is, and it's too graphic for this audience right now today, excuse me. But a different set of problems emerged as journalists, prosecutors, human rights activists, and therapists crowded into the survivors' psychological space with requests for interviews. One reporter told me she heard a colleague say loudly, "I need a woman who's been raped and speaks English."